Good afternoon, everyone. We are blessed to be here on Office Hours and want to thank my co-host. I think we're coming up on about 450 episodes of this show. It's amazing.
Pretty close.
Learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM, world business consultant, coach, but most importantly, my dear friend and mentor. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Back from Hawaii. You're back from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. And now I'm a little bit conflicted over our next guest because I've been a big fan of his. Extraordinary writer, New York Times bestseller, great speaker and radio commentator. A lot of people don't know what the radio is, but it's pre-podcast basically. If anybody
Ask your grandparents, kids.
exactly. But most importantly, I being a Buckeye fan, I'm a little bit sour still. And the Wolverine, I used to represent Harbaugh, and he asked us to represent him to be a coach, and Lee and him just didn't get along, Lee Steinberg. So I'm a little bit torn to have him, but it was nice to see that Ann Arbor did have a bad team there at one time or another from America's worst high school hockey team. Too bad it's not the world's worst football team. That would have done me well a couple Sundays. So anyway, we're going to talk about leadership. Welcome, John U. Bacon, to Office Hours.
Well, David, I know about your podcast. Of course, it's great stuff. Thank you, Blaine and David. And of course, Lee Steinberg and Jerry Maguire and all the rest. That precedes you naturally. So let's see, Saudi Arabia and Hawaii in your case, Blaine.
Yeah.
In my case, Traverse City, Michigan, not quite the same.
Hey,
no, and
I will put the woods next week.
I will put a commercial in that there is a new Hawaii. It's called Alula, right there in Saudi. I have not been to a more exotic place in the middle of a desert. It was amazing. So I highly suggest if anyone ever wants to leave Michigan, go to Alula. It's a little bit of a drive, but you'll definitely enjoy it. But let's talk about something that's important to Blaine and I, leadership. And there seems to be in your book, Let Them Lead, an allowance of leadership in some unexpected places. And I'd love for you to kind of share your own newfound perspective of leadership within the context where most people probably would deem to find more resistance or failure than leadership.
It's a great way to frame it, by the way, the allowance factor. Look, I mean, what they said in 2000, this is the worst team in America. That's not false modesty. 0, 22, and 3 ranked dead last out of 1,256 teams nationwide. Ann Arbor Huron River Rats, that's actually our mascot. So Harbaugh went to Ann Arbor Pioneer. The Pioneers, that's Bob Seger and Ken Burns, the filmmaker, Jim Harbaugh. We're the other school. We're the River Rats, okay? So that's the only one in the country. That tells you something. So there we were. But everyone said the same thing about that generation. They're saying about this one. Millennials are lazy and entitled and selfish. They won't work hard. They won't stay late. They won't work for each other, et cetera. And that's what you're hearing even more about Generation Z. And I do see these behaviors. I know what you're talking about. But what we do in these situations is we panic. We panic, we lower the bar, and we start putting in casual Fridays and Taco Tuesdays and beanbag chairs and so on. And the problem is actually those work. Those work in attracting people who like beanbag chairs and casual Fridays and Taco Tuesdays. The bait you set out for your fish are the fish you're going to get. And if you're lowering the bar is your thing, you're going to get people who love a lower bar. My advice I got from Al Clark, legendary coach at Culver Academies in Indiana. You probably heard about that. The guy started in 76 with an outdoor rink and 12 Hispanic players never skated before. Third year, they're state champs, 8 straight years. Then they sent their second team to win the state title for 5 more years, and they just quit going altogether. 25 NHL draft picks, 9 NHL players, 6 Olympians out of the cornfields. And math department chairman also, no corners cut. His advice to me was very simple. He said, you've got to make it special to play for Huron. And I said, well, we're already the worst team in America. That's pretty special. He said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. And he said, the easiest way to make it special is to make it hard. And that seems paradoxical and contradictory. Navy SEALs take 6%. Peace Corps take 1 out of 6 applicants. They both pay very little. Those jobs are brutal. And how do they do it? They don't sell the salary. They sell the mission. So that's what you want to do is flip it on its side and sell the mission, not the paycheck.
Blaine, did he freeze on us? Oh, no wonder. There he is back. Blaine, you have a quick question there? Talking about frozen ice, you were the frozen guest. I mean, host. I'm not sure you can hear us. So it's interesting because there has to be that paradigm shift when you're making things more difficult. But it's one thing when you have a tradition of being difficult and being a winner haven, not winter, but a winner haven. To make that jump, how long did it take until the idea actually became a reality?
Pretty quickly, and a lot faster, frankly, than I thought. I thought the turnaround took me 5 years, and I was being optimistic. It took really 2 or 3.
Wow.
And as far as the culture goes, that turned around a lot faster than I thought. Our pledge was we're going to have the hardest workouts of any school, any team in the state of Michigan out of 180, and we did. And these are voluntary workouts, David, because I can't make them mandatory state law in the off season. And I thought, this is the worst team in America. These aren't Navy SEALs. We might have a pretty high attrition rate. Not one player quit. And they kept coming 3 days a week, all summer long, all fall, and started telling their friends, the lacrosse players and the basketball players, to come on down and try them out. And they'd crush them. And now those guys can't skate, so they can't help me. So unfortunately, but it really turned around. One quick story. In late August of our first year, it rains cats and dogs. It's Michigan. It's almost flooding. And then the sun comes out. Hey, you're a Ohio guy. You know what I'm talking about. Sun comes out and the steam is coming off the track. It's that bad. You can't see the goalpost at the end because the air is so wiggly, you can't make them out. And I say, we're not going to whine about this or cry about this. We're going to brag about the fact it's the hottest hour of the hottest day of the year. Who's with me? And they're all with me by then. Yeah. And then some new kid, 9th grader, grumbles something. I didn't even hear him. And my captain, Mike Henry, who was a great captain, he turns to the kid and says, hey, you play for Huron, and it's harder over here. Boom. That's it. That's what I wanted to hear. And it's not me telling them that. It's the coolest kid in the school. You don't need me. You need him. Okay, you're a 9th grader. He's a big man on campus. You got to have him on your side. And that's when Al Clark said, now you got a culture. If it's you versus them, they win. It's got to be layers of leadership. Military gets this. Great. You've been around a lot of great teams, both you guys. Find me the great team that's only the coach. You don't. And a guy coaching at Lansing Catholic Central, when I was coaching at Ann Arbor Huron, is a guy named John Cooper. You might know that name. He's now the Tampa Bay Lightning head coach. He's won 2 straight Stanley Cups and almost won a third. I guess our careers diverged at some point because I'm free this season. So,
well, yeah.
And another Michigan guy, by the way, is probably one of the greatest locker room leaders of all time, which is Tom Brady, which I'm sure Bill Belichick. Right. He misses every week. He misses that guy from being a locker room leader is something that a head coach just dreams of having.
The quick line from Cooper, though, was great. Bad teams, nobody leads. Good teams, coaches lead. Great teams, everybody leads. And that's the point of the book.
I love this. I apologize, John. I had some technical, stuff come out.
Blaine's super rich. He lives in one of those places that he has like his own island where they don't even have like regular internet. So, someday we both aspire to have that kind of money. To not have it. And you're really rich. You don't even get internet. You don't even need internet.
It's kind of like I don't need it. I don't need it.
We should. That's rich.
I want to check something out with you.
That's rich. That's
making
it. This idea of greatness in the leadership, and I know we're going to be transitioning here in just a minute, but I wanted to just check out. I've been working with leadership development for, literally 40 years. Yeah, wow. in a corporate environment, primarily with CEOs and their executive teams. And I finally landed on a definition that I think really resonates for what you're talking about. And it's that move from good to, really great. And it's about influencing rather than command and control, influencing others in order to co-create coordinated movement.
My man, Blaine, your 40 years have not been wasted. Okay.
I would like to think so.
He's got it.
Yeah,
that's it. Look, and one thing that's definitely true about this generation, command and control will not work. It worked on my generation. It will not work on them.
Right.
My day, because I told you so, was a fine answer. And that's not going to work now. So you're right. It's from command and control to what we call layers of leadership. And our joke in the team is, leading by example is important. We've got a name for those who lead by example. They're called sophomores. Because all that means is You know your job, you can do your job. By your junior year, know your job, do your job, know everyone else's job too. And by your senior year, know your job, do your job, know everyone else's job, and help them do their jobs better. And now it's not just me, it's Mike Henry. All right, you got to answer to him, and you'll answer to your peers better than you will to authority as a rule.
Absolutely.
And lastly, I want to ask about something, and this may be a little bit selfish. And, you know, I'm a big student of Thurber, and
of course you're a Buckeye.
Yeah, and unpopular as it is,
I know where he went to school.
Yeah, but I am amazed because counterintuitively as well, the philosophy of social deviance and perturbation still can be used within the context of this type of leadership as well. How do you see perturbation being utilized today with this generation in this type of form of leadership?
I think it's vital. And I mean, one of the points I make in chapter 9 is make peer pressure work for you. Peer pressure is a reality, and it's either working for you or against you. It's almost always framed as a negative, but on our team, it was a positive.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was, we used that, we leveraged that for greater good. I could leave them by themselves in the locker room for half an hour and not worry about it. Our third season, after a 14-game winning streak, we had 2 tough losses. Close games, and I put the team in charge of the next game. You are coaching the entire game, picking the lineup, picking the lines, changing on the fly in hockey, as you know. Someone's got to be there, and I didn't say a word all night. We beat a ranked team 6-0. So whenever I was in doubt, by the third year I could really do that. You let go of the seat. Look, driver's ed. I drive, you watch. You drive, I watch. The third step's the hard one, boys. You know this. Here are the damn keys.
Yeah.
Everything I'm telling you is simple, but none of it's easy, and it takes courage.
And that last piece, I'm absolutely all over that. It takes courage. You know, David, you used the word perturbation, and I love it when you use big words.
Yeah, I steal them from Blaine. He taught me them. That's how rich he is. He teaches me the big words.
But
especially if I use them in the right way, it's really cool.
Well, you do. I mean, see, I know you're using them in the right way. When I all of a sudden a little penny drops, and I go, "Oh, there's a move here." Instead of perturbation, and John, what you were talking about was perturbation.
Yeah,
perturbation. Yeah, you give it to the peers.
Yes.
The peers disrupt it. They say, "Hey, let's get this thing back where it needs to be. Get it back on track." Perturbation. I've got a new word to play with.
Any last piece of advice as we are moving so swiftly as well? The changes are occurring so quickly. You, Blaine, and I are a little bit more seasoned, no pun intended, but there is extraordinary change. Coming from the book, a takeaway that could help us be leaders when the foreseeable future has become less foreseeable than ever.
No question about it. Look, this way is not for everybody, and I get it. I'm often told that, well, you can't get everyone that way. Yeah, you don't want them. Navy SEALs is not taking everybody. Neither is Harvard Law School, or Northwestern Medical School.
Or Ohio State.
Or Oregon Ducks.
Or Ohio State. Well,
I'm going to get the green and yellow.
Get Oregon in there.
Duck.
Our colors were green and gold, by the way. We got it covered. So
Ohio State was my last
main thing is
championship.
to be more confident and have more faith in what you're doing, and in your company, and whatever your company is. And again, you don't want them all. You want the strivers, basically. You want the go-getters. Yeah, and you get them that way because what they want is to be challenged.
Well, we will definitely have you back on, John. John U. Bacon, check him out. Let Them Lead by Bacon.com. An incredible book, Let Them Lead. A lesson in humble leadership and humility can be utilized and still be able to transform a team through toughness and higher expectations. Let's set our bars high. We are only limited by our own self-image, and if someone can help us raise that self-image, we're all the better. Man, I wish I had more time with you, but Susanna is here on time. Every time you wish somebody was late, there she shows up on time. But we'll have you back, John. Thanks for joining us.
Definitely.
I'm going to rub you guys on my podcast. Keep you warned.
All right, please, we love that. And I'm rooting for Michigan. I put that on public now. They beat the crap out of us, and the better team won. So I'll root for Michigan.
Oh, you be still my beating heart.
I'm not sure Oregon's going to make it. USC's
Oregon's not going to make it. You're talking about shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, that's what college football is. What makes it great. But we're going to 12 teams next year.
I saw
which will
that.
be really fun.
Yeah.
I come from Division III where there's 16 teams, so you at least knew the best teams somewhere were in there and had a chance to win, kind of like basketball, which makes the unbelievable. The tournament's my favorite thing in basketball because you get the best teams, the best teams winning, which is really fun. All right, Susanna's here. Let's bring her on. Susanna Baldwin, SusannaBaldwin.com, the owner, executive, and a communications coach. And her book is quite poignant and relevant and very powerful in itself. And it's about women, language, and power. And I'm very curious, Susanna. Those are three things that don't normally fit together historically. And you're luckily on a show with two middle-aged white men who are still unlearning. We're still unlearning a lot of things.
Talking about sports. I was waiting to see the transition
Yeah.
into this.
But I have three daughters, and
nice,
I am on a mission. The charity that Blaine and I both sit on the board of is on a mission to change the world by empowering everyone in the world, and especially those that are a little bit more enlightened than some others. But for you, there is a giving voice to our ambition. And I'm curious how the interplay between being a woman and utilization of language in a position of power.
Well, one of the things we know for sure is that organizations do better when women are in senior leadership positions. But one of the top reasons women are held back from senior leadership positions is their communication style. So the term that gets bandied about a lot is executive presence. Now, an very ill-defined concept that has something to do with she doesn't assert herself enough, she's not decisive enough, she doesn't command the room enough, she doesn't, some form of that. And what I've discovered is that women, this is no flaw of women's, but women have been socialized since they were little. Your little girls are in the process right now of being socialized to speak in ways that undermines their power. So they're literally told to be quiet and to be nice, to wait their turn, to not show up in such a big way, to not take up space, to not assert themselves, but to assert themselves nicely. When girls are told 3 times more often to be quiet and nice than boys are. So then that training, essentially, and that's what it is, women go into the work world and then they're being asked to command a room, speak up, say what you have to say, be decisive, essentially what they think is being told to speak like men. And they're not very good at it. And so then that's where they get stuck and women languish. And then they start deciding maybe they'll stay home with having kids instead of moving forward, or they decide don't care that much about moving into a senior leadership position. So we lose women at a certain point. But a lot of it has to do with the way women are trained to speak, literally puts them at a disadvantage in organizations that largely have male norms of speaking.
Yeah, I need to interject. Wait 1 second. I need to say one thing because interesting statistic that I saw, which was extraordinary. Over 90% of women C-level executives in the Fortune 500, over 90% played college sports, which means part of their participation in sports was probably the language that they learned in the sport was more applicable to leadership roles in the companies. Is that a fair assessment?
Sure, because the language of sports is more masculine. And what's been problematic all along is that we've gendered language. Being direct and authoritative and directive is not the domain of men. It's just what you've been allowed to do and girls have been discouraged to do. So what I'm suggesting and speaking of stats, the most successful women leaders toggle between very collaborative language, which they know how to do really well, and very direct and authoritative language. And it's the mix that makes them really successful in an arena that has troubles in some ways, not in sports so much, but in corporations, accepting women who are maybe too much, too directive, too authoritative. So we're in a catch-22, but sure, they learn that language and they're comfortable with it. So that's what I'm saying to women is you're not talking like men. You're just taking back a style of language that should be available to you to use when it's necessary. Because
You
when
know,
it's necessary to say, I need this by Friday, Friday is the last date, and you better get in here and tell me why you can't get it to me by Friday, as opposed to, it would be great if I could have it by Friday. Oh, I'd love it if you could get it to me by Friday. Two very different communications.
you know, the idea of designing an environment so that it designs me in return. And I'm going to put, it's ontology, the ontological design mechanism. So you design an environment that it ends up designing the participants in the environment in return. So what you're speaking to, Susanna, is that the environment that, women grow up in designs them in a certain way. And David, what you were talking about, and I loved that statistic. I've got to find the citation on that. The environment of a sports team, and this is gender neutral, really, but the environment of team, that sports environment designs women when they're participating in those sorts of environments to be equipped with a different language arrow in the quiver that can be unbelievably powerful when they mix the two together, just as you're describing. So when I look at leadership presence, I'm looking at how do I influence others? And I think powerful women have the ability to actually influence in a dramatically more substantive way than most men do, if they recognize how to develop that skill set. Because I mean, and I think this is exactly what you're speaking to, if I'm not mistaken. And I haven't read your book, but I'm definitely intrigued with it. So I'm going to be picking up a copy of it. Is that a fair assessment?
Okay, I'm thinking about what you said. Like they're more, they can actually influence more effectively because they have a larger repertoire, especially women. Yeah, because they have a larger repertoire. That's like having a larger tool belt. I can be more effective and specific. That's right. Good communicators are always looking at who's in front of me, what's important to them, what's going to most influence them or convince them of what I want to convince them of, and how do I have to show up to do that? If you're limited to one style of language, you're stuck there. And particularly if it's a style of language that is not necessarily promoted or condoned in the organization you work in. So it's funny, David, what you say about sports. I have a very good friend who's a very senior woman at Autodesk. And she said to me the other day, she grew up in playing sports. And so she says, I know when I'm working with men to use sports analogies, like don't hog the ball. You know what I mean? This is a team thing. Don't hog the ball. And that in an instant, communicates more effectively than perhaps anything else. But because women are so uncomfortable with that other style, and they've been taught to thought, not only am I not comfortable with it, but it means I'm a bossy, bitchy, self-oriented, egotistical, whatever it is. They just don't want to touch it. And what I'm trying to do is help them understand, you've been sold a bill of goods, that this is just where you need to stay down here. And believe me, when I talk about empowerment and ambition, when women start to move in that direction and they can say exactly what they want to say and not modify it to make it sound nice, not modify it to make it sound collaborative, that's when they feel a sense of empowerment. And that's when they get excited, because it's now authentic. When people talk about authenticity, it's very hard for women to be authentic because they've got to constantly put on top of what they want to say all these niceties. So that's the real where women get really powerful.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I have found for everyone, but particularly for my daughters who are now 23, 21, and 18, is I think the greatest capability or skill and knowledge that I had to empower them with things that I had to unlearn was a skill called selling. And I have found that if I teach people to sell, that it transcends beyond the social economical inheritance that has occurred for the last 200 years in America, that the characteristics that are necessary to sell, whether it's how to tell a story, articulate quantitative value, create emotional connection, credibility itself, being able, I think a big one for my girls was, for whatever reason, I've seen my generation make it not okay for women to sell to sell their idea or to sell, to promote themselves, right? And
Absolutely.
I see it in resumes, I see it in interviews. And president of my company is a woman, and the founder of our charity is a woman, and they sell. How important is it that in this communication to know how to sell, to take on this type of communication?
Oh, you mean if you want to be successful at selling yourself or selling whatever you're selling, your ideas.
Is selling a great way to empower women to transcend the more social acceptable ways that we raise or have raised them in the past?
Yeah, because they have to be comfortable with the idea of coming forward with, I've got an important idea, first of all, that you need to really understand and think about. You know what I mean? You have to have a certain level of confidence to say, this is so important, I'm going to take your time and tell you about it. For starters, that's difficult for women. So if I just tell you about it, maybe you'll like it, but I'm not going to come forward in the most confident way. That's for starters. It's very important to be able to sell and sell yourself in organizations. Women hate to do it. They'll say, why do I have to socialize what my value is? Why do I have to talk about my team's accomplishments? Why can't my boss just see my good work and promote me? But I'll give you an example. I have a client who got an SVP job, been very successful. They just moved her up to reporting from the CFO to the CEO. Now that's a promotion of sorts. Do you know what I mean? And she's been there a year and a half. She's never asked for more salary. And so I was bringing up to her and she said, will it seem opportunistic if I ask for money right after I've been promoted, so to speak to the CEO? Will it be opportunistic? Will it look opportunistic? That's what we're up against when you're talking about selling or selling yourself. Is I don't want to look egotistical. I don't want to look, out that I'm out there for myself. And you know what I said? Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, who cares? If you get the yes, which is what you're talking about, if you get the yes, you're going to get more money.
Well, the idea of authenticity.
Men don't say that. They don't say, no, men don't say that.
No,
exactly.
Opportunistic? Why? I'm going for it. If it's an opportunity, I'm going through the window.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Authenticity, and I'm going to tie this back to giving voice to their ambitions. Desire is the soul's way of saying, I'm here, let's come alive, let's go out here, let's play big. And authenticity is the way, I'm struck by this. Authenticity is what I'm left with when I stop worrying about or trying to manage your perceptions of me. And when we can get to that state, is that opportunistic? Doesn't even enter the picture.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Don't worry about what they think of you.
I love that. My daughter gave me a quote which is called, to experience bliss, you have to put aside what you think people think of you. I mean, because if you got that going on, there is no bliss. But with ambition specifically, there was a woman who really influenced me writing my own book, Anna Fells. She was a psychiatrist. She said, with ambition means you pursue the mastery of your craft. That's one half of ambition. The other is you seek recognition from your peers for that mastery. And she said what she kept seeing is women would become masters, but then seeking recognition, again, not in gender norm, terminology for women, is to be ambitious. No. And that's where they would fall off and begin to opt out of their ambition. So, I mean, and then,
so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that opt out of their ambition is a really interesting perspective, because I see it a lot of times. And speaking of, caring about what other people think, just raising, children, boys and girls, it's interesting because girls seem on the surface to care so much about what other girls think. And it's interesting. I'm sure boys, as they get older, they care what other girls think as well about them. But there's an interesting way of looking at it. Reputation. I have found it really powerful. My kids will come home and say, well, so-and-so, she thinks this about me, Dad. And they're so upset, as you know. And I'll say, well, how many girls were there at the practice? Oh, 21. I said, well, terrific. There's 21 reputations that you have at practice. That's just one of them. And to get them to think about, there's, everyone has a reputation determined upon each individual who has the reputation seen by that perception of them. How do we give, especially young girls with social media, a better sense of confidence that, Shakespeare was absolutely right, and to thine own self be true, that we don't need everyone's approval of what we wear, what makeup we buy, what purse we whatever it is that I have to deal with when my girls were younger. How do we help them understand to thine own self be true?
That's a really, really good question about young girls. I mean, because well, okay. Let me think about it.
Plenty of time. You just separated yourself from the majority of our guests. We're almost at 500 episodes. You've now separated. She's actually going to think before she talks. This is Hall of Famer. You're in the Hall of Fame.
I love it. Okay, that's very good. Well, to reinforce who they are and what they like. I mean, I would just be reinforcing this. So this is what you think. Let's put her out of the, let's get, what do you think? And continue to value and promote that. I guess I would just start there. But girls are socialized. And part of the language thing is Deborah Tannen years ago wrote a book called You Just Don't Understand Me. And what she said is we basically learn to speak in same-sex groups. And for girls, the power of the group is not about one key power player. It's about the inclusive group. So, and boys learn to talk in hierarchical terms. Who's the top dog? How can I, put myself in the hierarchy there? So the girls with the group, they always want to make sure they're not offending anyone, because that is, again, a no. We are not supposed to do that. So it's very hard to do. And I think you have to spend a lot of time saying, you got to think about yourself and just value that. What's important to you. But the adolescent process about the peers and how important they become, you can't quite fight that completely, but
Now I teach no need to be offended, and that usually gets scoffed at, laughed at, and made fun of every time the dad says, hey, you have no need to be offended. But someday, hopefully, as Dennis Waitley taught me, I'm planting seeds under trees that'll never sit under. More importantly, Blaine, don't you think it'd be great to have Susanna back and John Gray?
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be fun.
That would be a hoot.
Oh,
he's a good friend, good friend of Blaine. We're going to leave, but we belong to an organization called the Transformational Leadership Council, and Jack Canfield, these amazing people, thought leaders are in it. And so Blaine and his wife Cynthia invited us, my wife, to dinner, and we sat down, and my wife is a mega fan of John Gray. She's a voracious reader. And so we go through all dinner, and all Blaine and Cynthia said is, this is our friend John. Can he join us for dinner? And we're like, yeah. Well, we go the whole night, and my wife, the whole night, she's like, what an interesting guy. I really enjoyed John. And she's like, did you catch his last name? I'm like, yeah, I caught his last name. I go, he wrote one of your favorite books. That's John Gray. And she lost her mind. She's like, why didn't Blaine tell me we're having dinner with John Gray? So just bravo to you, Blaine, for the humility of doing that to us. Anyway,
anytime, anywhere, I would love to come back and talk. I can't, obviously I've devoted myself to this topic and in my leadership coaching, but I really like when I got on.
We'll work on that. It'd be an awesome segment. We'll work on that.
That'll be
someone that we haven't invited on anyway, Blaine. So it'd be fun to have him on.
Yeah. Let's get him.
All right.
Yeah. It's been fun. Really appreciate your interest and
Vice
taking
versa.
the time to talk to me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Come
Thanks,
back.
Susanna.
Awesome. SusannaBaldwin.com. Check out her book, Women, Language, and Power. It's not just for women. It's very important for men to learn that as well. As you know, Blaine, we have to unlearn a few things, and we have to open our minds, our hearts, and our hands to everyone. And we have our final guest here, Blaine, looking forward. Ray Wong is in the house, CEO of Ray Wong Consulting.
There we
go.
Love the glasses.
I think she's just style. And listen to the title of her book, Blaine. This is amazing. Get the Money, Honey, the no bullshit guide to raising more money for your nonprofit. We got to bring Cynthia on here, introduce you to Ray. That's for sure. But it's really interesting, raising money, whether it's for profit or not for profit or nonprofit. It's not something that women are afforded. Let me just tell you, these numbers are killing me every day. I'm on a mission because under 3% of the people that are funded on earth for their companies, under 3% now, it's going down, not up, are women or people of color. Women and people of color equal over 70% of the people on earth. This is driving me nuts. And it's amazing. It's still true within the context of nonprofits. Now, you are teaching people and are an expert in understanding how we convert these dollars into the places with people who are actually statistically better with money, which are women. Women are more successful than men as leaders in these situations. A better bet to finance a woman than a man. These are all proven. So what are the things that are in the no bullshit side of raising more money? Because I'm sure it works for profit or not for profit or for nonprofit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, David, thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure. I'm a little starstruck, I'll be honest.
Oh, because Blaine's here?
And of course, Blaine. Hi.
How you doing, Rhea?
I'm well, thanks. Well, it's interesting that you asked, David, because I think I've been studying you a little bit, and I think part of what you say really resonates, which is we're afraid to ask big, right? We're afraid to
Mm-hmm.
make big asks because we don't want to bother people, we don't want to offend people, and so we make do with a feast of crumbs. So I think that's the one thing, and then the other thing is I think we all have a lot of stuff about money, right? We have feelings about money, we have baggage about money, we have some limiting beliefs about money, particularly in the nonprofit world. I think we have a real scarcity mindset. And so I think for most fundraisers, in order to be really successful, you have to get into this mindset of abundance, of that the universe is here to catch you. And I think so often, because we're in this scarcity mindset, a lot of nonprofit people get into this transactional mindset, this tit for tat, this looking at donors as walking checkbooks as opposed to looking at them as partners and providing
Mm-hmm.
value. And David, I know you're big into providing value, and as we know, money follows value. So I think that's really critical.
Yep. It's Cynthia, my wife, runs the Unstoppable, founded and runs the Unstoppable Foundation that David and I both sit on the board of. David is the chair for life. It was an interim position,
For
but
life, that's a long time.
She said an interim CEO, and she believes in multiple lifetimes. So interim meant this lifetime. Fair
Okay.
enough.
yeah.
I enjoy it.
And honestly, I humbly speaking, and I'm acknowledge the bias here, but I think she is a phenomenal fundraiser. She has literally raised millions of dollars for this foundation. And what I'm struck by is, kind of your notion of the secret sauce. It's right mindset, right systems, and right strategies.
That's
And
right.
if Cynthia's got a superpower, I think it is the right mindset. And it
Mhm.
taps into this notion of abundance and giving an opportunity for people to actually thrive by giving.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not a customer.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a gift by making it available to you to give to us to do the work that we do.
That's
And
right.
that is such an unusual mindset in my experience. And it's
That's
not
right.
about reciprocity. It's not about quid pro quo. It's
Mhm.
the magic of truly altruistically giving.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you can teach that?
Oh,
She
yeah.
came by it, I think, kind of almost innately. It's just kind of how she's
Yeah.
wired. But how do you teach that, and how is it addressed in your book?
Yeah, Blaine, that's such a great question. And, I'd love to meet your wife because she sounds incredible.
Oh, she
Um,
is.
I, I think a big part of it is it
Blind and
starts.
deaf, though, so it's really extraordinary.
So I think a big part of it starts with your own mindset, right? It starts with your own stories that you tell about money, the way that you've been raised, the way that you believe that money can or can't flow. So a big piece of what we do, and this is really the fundamental block for me, is what are the blocks that you're putting up within yourself that's keeping the energy from flowing? Because I think we have this belief, and particularly if you didn't come from money, you have a lot of stories that you tell about people with money and the things that they did to get the money, and they must be bad people. And blah, blah, blah. We have a lot of stories that we tell. You can't lead the people if you don't love the people. And
Yes.
so I
Hmm.
really think of fundraising as, let's just stop with all of the prejudices and let's just enter a conversation. And I think that is the big switch too, because a
Yep.
lot of people talk about, like, what's my pitch? What's my pitch? I have raised millions of dollars and I've never done it on the back of a pitch. I've done it on the back of a conversation. I've done it on the back of a relationship, right?
Yep.
I am offering you the opportunity to be part of this incredible, life-changing, world-changing thing that we're doing. And hey, if it's not for you, that's okay. There are lots of people out there for whom this might be their thing. And I think the other piece is people get very sort of anxious about fundraising because of the anxiety of rejection and what that
Yeah.
means about me. But it doesn't mean anything about you. It's simply saying that this is just not for me. That's okay,
Mhm.
right? I think of fundraising as a party. No one
Yeah.
is ever offended about being invited to a party, but if you do come to my party, I'm going to tell you what to bring, right? We can't have all sides or all mains or all beverages. So it's really about how am I as a fundraiser being the conduit to bring people together to achieve something greater than ourselves.
Which is ironic because the biggest gift I've ever given was when I turned 50 years old, which is when Cynthia created the foundation on her 50th birthday. She asked everybody to give to the charity she was creating. When I turned 50, I did 50 birthday parties, one a week for an entire year, to raise money to build community centers for the charity.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. There's an area that really changed my corporate life, and Cynthia was a catalyst for me as she shifted from Bob Proctor and his understanding of value add versus zero sum. But I'd always been someone more tendent in the emotional side of a sale to oversell, back end sell. I dropped the lying, manipulating, and cheating at a young age, but I could definitely get people excited and
Yeah.
oversell. Um, but this formulatic approach that was created by working and learning from Cynthia and Blaine, of an open-ended question of just what are you doing today in Africa? What are you doing today to support women? What are you doing today to help children with cancer? What do you like about it? Right? What don't you like about it?
Mm-hmm.
And to add value, if you're living in a value add world, if we know what someone likes and doesn't like about the subject matter in which we're working on, whether it's for profit or not, if we know what they like, we can add more value to their life by giving them more of what they like.
Yep.
And if we know what they don't like, we can add value to their world by taking away some of what they don't like and giving them
Yeah.
something that they like. And now the more difficult piece, I think, for people that have a more philanthropic mindset to start and get involved in charities to raise money because they want to help people is they have to get over their ability to articulate quantitative value to exceed what they're asking for. And there's a lot of guilt and shame in articulation of value because
Yeah.
they forget their purpose, and their purpose far exceeds the pain of asking. So how do you train people in what I found to be the most statistically, because you do deal with the right systems and strategies, the most
Mm-hmm.
statistical successful way of getting someone to give you money for a cause or a solution, service, brand, whatever, is
Yeah.
to be able to quantitatively know what they like and don't like, but then articulate quantitatively the value to exceed what you're asking for. Now, if you can build enough value for 100 million, you're very comfortable asking for 50 million.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
So you said a lot there. Let me unpack it. I think the
That's my
number.
secret. You have 1 minute to answer. I
Yeah.
said
All right.
I
I'm ready. I'm
purposely.
in. I think the
Take as
biggest
much time as you need in the next minute to answer that
All right.
loaded question.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to get
Tell me
away
all
that
about your
here.
life. You got 50 seconds left.
All right. So I think the big mistake that everyone makes is thinking that fundraising is like sales, and I think that most salespeople are probably trained very poorly as well, right? We teach
Mhm.
people to show up and like do the pitch and like talk about all the things. I always talk about it in the context of a date, right? Would you show up to a first date with a resume and 10 reasons why you should date me because I went to this school and have this GPA and this is my salary? I mean, you could, you probably wouldn't get a second date, right? So I talk about it as with donors, what you're trying to do is to see if there's alignment. Do we want the same things? Do we see the world the same way? And if so,
Mhm.
what can we build together? Right? So it's not extractive, it's not transactional, it's an invitation to come along on a ride. And again, not everyone is going to want to come along to your party, and that's okay. But when we put the work at the center and we make it about the work and we make it about what can every single person, regardless of how much money they have or don't have, how can they be part of the work in a meaningful way that's meaningful not just to the organization, but to them personally, that's when we have partnership. And I truly believe at the end of the day, all of us want to have left some positive mark in the world. Like we're all going to die one day, hopefully very far from now, but we're all going to die. And we want significance. We want the world to have been a little bit better because we were on the planet. And we, as nonprofits, offer people that opportunity.
Mhm.
Beautifully
Well
said.
said.
Ria, you're amazing.
Yeah.
We are here to support you, and we definitely have to set up a call with Cynthia and Ria
Oh,
Yeah.
I'd love
about our
to.
Unstoppable CEO of the Ria Wong Consulting, riawong.com, helping people raise millions of dollars to help other people. Can you imagine a better world? Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks for being a Dave Meltzer fan, and you come back anytime.
And a
Thank
new
you so
Blaine
much.
Bartlett fan.
I know.
That's
and a
right.
Blaine Bartlett fan. And thank you so much for all you do for all of your charities. I know you're a big giver and philanthropist, both of you. So thank you for that.
You bet, Ria.
We love you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I prefer the term philanthropimp. I've been pimping out celebrities and athletes for
Philanthropimp.
charities for years. That's my favorite. Well, you know, better late than never. We got our man Jim Bayless here,
Oh, Jim came
managing
in.
director. And see, Jim, the reason I said that is I can see you in the green room. Blaine can't, so I didn't want him to hang up real quick and leave me. Managing director and head of strategic operations group at Capital Spring, capitalspring.com, and you know, the world of debt, equity, and capital today has changed very quickly. And I was with, for years, Gary Vaynerchuk telling young entrepreneurs, you know, if you cannot raise money right now, just wait.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those great times. But you have over $2 billion invested and understand the idea of raising money and capital. How has the environment changed just in the last 6 months? And what are you guys now focused in on to give the right companies and the right people capital to build their businesses effectively?
Well, fortunately, we closed on our latest fund here just in April, which was approximately $1 billion. And so now, you know, our focus is really more on deployment rather than, you know, raising capital. And so, you know, the environment has certainly changed. I would say, you know, generally, you know, a lot of investors are on the sidelines waiting to see what happens as we turn the corner into the new year and potentially a recession, and how, you know, some of the raising of interest rates and other inflationary pressures are going to impact those people that are restaurant consumers, because we are, you know, mostly a restaurant focused PE firm, although we do invest in other multi-unit businesses. So, you know, environment certainly has changed. We'll see how much in the coming months.
I mean, to say the environment has changed is a real understatement when we're looking at that, you know, at the restaurant space. And I have to be curious in the context of, yeah, you're investing. I'll use the word strategy here, but just the come from, as you're looking at opportunities in this kind of an environment. You've got, you know, some, you know, chains that have been around forever that are really contracting, if not going out of business. How, you know, what's the cachet that you look to, or what's the business proposition that you're looking to right now as an investor in this? And it's a pretty tightly niched space here. What do you look for? Because I got a hunch there's some transferability here into some other sectors.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for us, we, you know, first and foremost, we focus on, you know, great operators that are operating great businesses, that have a proven track record of success. I would say too that, you know, while we have invested in more of, you know, in our sector, we break out into segments, I'm sure like many others, where you have full service restaurants, those that have waiters and waitresses, and within that you have casual dining, which are the Applebee's and Chili's of the world, and then fine dining, which are the steakhouse chains. And then below that you have the more limited or quick serve businesses. And, you know, that's where historically, you know, we focused our capital. You know, those businesses that, you know, really can have a small flexible footprint, so that, you know, you're not locked into a large, you know, Cheesecake Factory type box, you know, that you're trying to find and land and, you know, make a huge investment that's very asset heavy. And also, you know, those historically that employ fewer people, because it's a big challenge to employ people today. And those with, you know, really strong unit economics, probably stating the obvious. So, you know, whether it's a franchise business, we look at it, you know, net of royalties and marketing, or just an independent concept, you know, we're looking at, you know, middle to high double digit store level economics that are being laid down. And, we feel like if we can focus on those businesses while not sexy, there's a lot of restaurant investors that, like to have the farm to table and the latest, hottest, newest. We're not that kind of investor. We really look at, very steady Eddie. Again, it's not as sexy, but they tend to perform better in volatile markets.
And you've been involved in the restaurant experience for over 40 years. I think 19 different restaurant companies. And there's been a lot of, I'm sure, as in Blaine in my life, a lot of dummy tax that you've paid. And I love to extrapolate on the mistakes that we see most common in the space. What are, one or two of the biggest mistakes that either restaurant investors or restaurant operators make when they're, looking in this space to, and should look here in the next, few years? What are some of those bigger mistakes that we should look for?
I mean, it shifted over time, and I would say more recently, the biggest mistake is not to put your employees and your team members first. Historically, as we've created mission statements for our restaurant businesses, and in addition to my role at Capital Spring, I'm the CEO of one of our portfolio investments that we have over 13,000 employees, and we've shifted in the last 9 months to focus on our team members first. Historically, it's let's focus on the guest, let's focus on profits, and then let's focus on our team members. We've flipped the script on that. And I think, a big mistake that people have made is they're not making that adjustment. A lot of restaurant companies out there believe if they just pay more, they can get away with a lot more. And that's not the case. We conduct quarterly surveys, and our team members, interestingly, are less interested in more pay and more about what the business stands for, how you care about them as people. And so we've really shifted the script across our portfolio, and we're working with our investment partners to really focus on team members. Just one example is, the business that I'm running right now. We onboarded in the last 12 months 21,754 people, which means we're doing something wrong. And so, by investing more in our people, it's kind of a flywheel. You invest in the people, they stay longer. Because they're there longer, they execute better against the guests. They deliver a better experience. Because they deliver a better experience, you have better business. You can invest in your employee, and you have this flywheel of success. And really, that's the big error that I see today is people just either throwing money at employees or not putting them first. And it's something where when we interview people now, it's not just what's your experience, it's what are you looking for out of this position. Is this something that in high school you just need some hours to make some side money, or is this really a career? And knowing who your employees are, we're some of our businesses, we're getting people where maybe they didn't do well in school or haven't had success in their life for one reason or another, and we can give them an opportunity to be part of something, to learn something. We've created mentorship programs where if they want to be something else or do something else, here are alumni from our businesses that you can speak with, that worked in our businesses at one point, now have moved on into other positions either within the company or other industries altogether. So short answer, that's one of them. I would say, the other is those people that, as I mentioned earlier, invest in what looks sexy or feels sexy versus what produces good economics. And there's a big difference between those two.
Yeah. One of the things I'm struck with, Jim, is, the way that you've positioned and described how you're working with your people. I've got a very strong bias that the purpose of business is to uplift the experience of being alive on the planet. And if I'm doing that well, I've got a pretty good shot at being successful. And it starts with the people that are working with me. If they don't feel like, there's a reason to be here, and I'm uplifted coming to work, I get, this brings joy and life to me when I come to work. When I got somebody working with me that's alive, that's palpable, and it translates to customer experience, and it's not a transactional experience. It's a very subjective, almost spiritual experience.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I was just going to, draw on one example how, the more that we've shifted our focus to the team member, the more familial the restaurants specifically have become. And just one example, so every meeting we have now, even if it's a meeting to discuss, key performance indicators of the business, has to start off with a discussion around a team member or team members. And earlier this week, we had a financial meeting on some reporting. And one of the people stories that was shared with me is there was a lady who's works for us. Her mother couldn't afford a wheelchair, was sick, and the team members at the restaurant pulled money together and bought a wheelchair for the lady's mother, the fellow team worker's mother. If we're not creating the right family environment among our team members, stuff like that doesn't happen. And a lot of people keep asking me, well, how do you measure the success of those efforts? That's one way, where people are working together for the success of other fellow workers. And, it's just so important right now.
Yeah, people, it's, even whether you're a speaker, coach, an author, whatever it is, confirmation of success is how we make people feel. And, taking care of our people that work with us and make them feel good, then they make the customers feel good. And people want to go where they feel good. And we see several companies that may or may not have the best product. And I'll pick on Starbucks because Howard Behar is a good friend of mine, and Schultz. But that may or may not be the best coffee in the world, but they were the first ones to realize how to make people feel good when they're drinking their coffee, and their employees feel good serving the coffee, and the executives as well. So I think you are definitely tapping into the greatest resource that we have here, especially in our country, our great people, and treating them the right way is certainly the way to be successful, as Blaine has always taught me. Thank you so much, Jim, for coming and visiting us. Come back soon. We know you're going to disperse that $1 billion in the right way. The only negative thing is I will be gaining weight visiting your restaurants over the next 10 years as my metabolism keeps slowing down. And there's so many great places that you own that make me feel good. So thanks for joining us, and we appreciate it. CapitalSpring.com. Great way to change the world is by building businesses, and financing those is the most critical of all ways to build a business. But regardless of the money, it's about the people. That's what I've learned today. Jim Bayless, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. And I apologize I was late today. Thank you.
It's all right. It all worked out perfect.
Rhea was there early, so you're covered. It worked out perfectly. All right, Blaine, what's your takeaway for the day?
I'm going to put it in a little bundle here and call it communication mastery. I mean, everybody communicates, but I mean, just beginning, all the way back up, with John talking about how he put together the teams, and just the communication that was necessary to actually have leadership exist, tangibly throughout the whole team. Susanna, I mean, it was just gold, that she was talking about. Rhea, the same sort of a thing here. Not just communication, but paying attention and mastering the process. And then with Jim, just now the idea of communicating with our teams, with our people, with those that work with us in ways that they feel valued. All of it comes down to the mastery of that process. And relationship communication is the lifeblood of relationship, and everything is a relationship.
No doubt. Mine, I teach lowering the bar, meaning to get started, because you always taught me nothing happens till it moves. And given me tons of things to read that prove that, and physics, metaphysics, and quantum physics to get things moving. The easiest way to get things moving is to lower the bar to get moving. But I think the nuance of my takeaway is to lower the bar, but set high expectations. That's obviously John with the Ann Arbor, the worst team in hockey, but yet he changed the team by saying this is the toughest team to beat, right? Our expectations are so high. This is gonna be the toughest team to be on. And with the power of women, setting high expectations for your daughters, for women in your company, to meet those expectations with the capabilities that they have. And Jim and Rhea, right? Their expectations of the people in what they're doing. And so I think, don't get confused when I say lower the bar. That's only to get started, right?
Yes.
If you're not working out, put your tennis shoes on the first day, lower the bar, but set your expectations of pursuing your potential every day. And that's my biggest takeaway. You're someone who has helped me come up with these crazy ideas that work and giving me a life. I will tell you, getting back from Saudi and going to Alula, I'm so blessed. I just couldn't imagine, Julie went with me, my wife, and I was flying back, and I don't know if it's the Akron, Ohio kid of growing up with nothing, but as I was in the air, pinching myself, going, I don't know what I'm doing or what I did to be in this amazing world with these amazing people, but I better keep on doing it because I don't want it to change. And I'll show up every Thursday as long as you do, my friend. Learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM. No better mastermind mindset, no better mentor in the world. The fastest way to get to where you want to be is find someone like Blaine and ask him for directions. It's the easiest and fastest way to get there. Blaine Bartlett, I love you. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you soon.
You bet, buddy. Love you too. Welcome home. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, team. Extraordinary guest, as always. Thank you, Blaine. Matt, I love everything about you but the clothes you wear. And everyone else, David@dmeltzer.com. Join me tomorrow for training. We're doing takeaways of the week at training tomorrow, 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We're there for over 23 years, over 75,000 people registered for tomorrow. A lot bigger than when I was at Lee Steinberg, but still, we're still going to train. That's what we do. David@dmeltzer.com. Be more interested than interesting. Be kind to your future self. Do good deeds. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.